Good morning. Thank you for listening to Stroke Warrior Radio Stroke Survivor Interviews. One of the reasons we do these interviews is to make sure that we share what we didn't know with other stroke survivors and telling them what they should have known. It's trying to help provide education, motivation, and information for new stroke survivors, whether it's a month ago or 10 years ago. So our guest today is Angie Blue. Hi, Angie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ralph?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good day, actually. It's nice for a change. The weather stopped. Tell us, when was your stroke?
My stroke was August 18th, 2021, and I was 34 years old.
Oh, younger person's stroke. Okay. What kind of stroke did you have?
So I had the clot kind of stroke, a ischemic stroke, and I always call it a freak stroke because I had no other health problems, had no idea I had a stroke, even when I went to ICU or sorry, ER and then ICU, and they told me I had a stroke. I thought they were crazy. I said, "Are you
Exactly.
sure you got the right person?" And I did. I ended up having an artery that tore my neck, that caused a clot, that caused a stroke. So that happened when I was 34 years old, and I'm 37 now.
Wow. What kind what kind of limitations were caused by your stroke at that time?
So it totally paralyzed the entire right side of my body, which is my dominant side, of course. I also had my left eye turned inwards and I had double vision for an entire year. And I could I couldn't walk for a while. So I went
Mhm.
from a wheelchair to walker to cane. Now I walk unassisted, but I mean literally everything you can think of except for I'd never lost my speech and I
Okay.
never lost anything cognitive, which is a miracle because most people do lose that when they go through
Yeah.
stroke to some point. And I didn't ever have a feeding tube or a breathing tube, which I'm very grateful for, but
Yeah.
I half my body didn't work and the double vision was really challenging for a year. I ended up having surgery for that about
Really?
a year past my stroke where it was a half-hour surgery. It's called Strasbourg surgery. And they went in and it's very invasive, uninvasive, is that the word? It's like 30 minutes, two incisions, and they turn your eye back, and I can see normal again. It's pretty
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you still have to do therapy for that, or do you do exercises or
I still, for my eyes, I still try to do, I don't know if you would call it, I don't go to any therapy for vision or anything, but I can read again. I couldn't, for a long time, I couldn't watch a movie or have any depth perception. I couldn't read a book. I always had to have someone near me because your vision affects everything. My balance was off. So now I still, I can read again. I watch a movie, writing anything that you do, even this, having a Zoom video. This is therapy, just moving your eyes. But I do practice like letters in the air and I would say reading and all of that. Definitely it's just daily therapy that helps with vision.
how'd you find out about doing those kind of exercises? Did you have therapy for that early on
I
there?
actually had an amazing neuro-ophthalmologist who referred me to a double vision eye surgeon. And those two doctors are the ones that told me about the different types of therapy I could do for myself on a daily basis that would help. Because for a while, my eye did start turning back on its own. So
Hmm.
when I initially had my stroke, I didn't have vision problems, but my clot moved in my head. They couldn't get it stabilized. So that's what caused my left eye to be turned inward. When that happens, obviously, if your eye physically is turned, it causes vision problems, but your eye can turn back, and mine did start turning back, but at the year mark, it never fully turned back. And I think, according to them, once you hit a year mark, it won't turn anymore. And I found out from my neuro-ophthalmologist that there was a surgery I could possibly have. And I owe that to him, that he knew of a double vision eye surgeon. That's all he does, is surgery for people that have their eyes turned in.
That's why we do these. I never heard of that.
I never heard of it either. And I've actually shared that on social media. And I've had two other stroke survivors who never heard of it either and got the surgery. And if I had never heard of that, I would still be walking around with double vision. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that that surgery even exists.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Um, Tell me about your original recovery experience. How long were you in the hospital, and did they start physical therapy right away?
So I was in ICU for 2 weeks, if I remember correctly. And then I was transferred to a regular hospital floor for another week. And then I went straight to inpatient rehab, which I was in for like 3 weeks. And then I actually had my stroke in Dallas, Texas, where I lived, and my parents live in Charleston, South Carolina. So I had to make the decision to move to South Carolina because my mom is my caretaker,
You first.
and that ended up being a huge cross country move and totally life changing. But I got into an outpatient program here in South Carolina at Roper St. Francis, which is an amazing hospital that has a specific stroke outpatient unit that I was in for a year. And since then, I've been at MUSC, which is the Medical University of South Carolina, and they offer stroke studies that are free to stroke patients who qualify for their different studies. They're all sponsored, a lot of them by the Veteran Affairs, some privately. And if you qualify for what they're looking for, you can take part in it. And it's basically free therapy. I just finished another hand study right before Christmas. So I've been in therapy for literally almost this entire time, and I'm going on 2.5 years post-stroke.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, mine's 8 and a little over 8 years, and I still go too. I still go to
Yeah,
physical therapy.
therapy is, I consider myself incredibly fortunate and blessed that I did not have any lull,
Yeah.
barely, with there. I think 4 or 5 days when I moved from Texas to South Carolina, just because I was so weak and, still in the acute phases, and everything needed to be transferred. And I had a lot of help from, I guess she was our social worker or point of contact at inpatient in Texas, who set me up with my primary care physician here in South Carolina, and then got a neurologist, got into therapy, all of that. But it was, the first phases. I mean, I was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
That was Therapy was rough. It is definitely improved a lot more. I've continued to progress, and I always tell people, and if you anyone who follows me personally in real life or on social media, that's why I share my journey. They always say, 6 months to a year, you're done progressing. Well, that's BS, because I'm living proof that that's not true. And if I had listened to whoever they are, I would still be in a wheelchair, or I'd be dead, and I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how we make miracles ourselves with our motivation and self-advocacy. Um,
Mhm.
how long were you in the wheelchair?
I think I was in a wheelchair about, let's say, maybe almost 2 months, 2-ish months, but they had people, with the gait belt that pull you up and put you on a walker and kind of force your legs to walk, because I was determined.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I really started using a walker by myself like with the help of my mom, probably after the 2 month mark. Like
Yeah,
once I got to Charleston, South Carolina, around their house, but I always had to have someone with me because my vision really, it was just hard to tell how far anything was or if there was a step or if anything changed. And I was so weak. I remember taking a shower and that was all I could do during the day besides therapy, which seemed, I mean, it just seemed like so much. I'm sure
yeah,
you remember those days too.
yeah, I do. How did you feel about your early physical therapy inpatient and all that? Was it, did you have to?
My, well, I felt, first of all, I felt really out of place because I was the only person in inpatient anywhere near my age. All the therapists were closer to my age than any of the patients. Everyone else in there was much older than me because younger stroke survivors you don't hear about as much. I mean, I even remember when I initially had my stroke, and this is part of the story that I think I'll tell you that I forgot to share. When I initially had my stroke, 3 days before, I was throwing up like crazy, and I kept throwing up and then passing out, falling asleep, waking up, feeling fine. I actually teledocked the night before my stroke and the doctor prescribed me nausea medicine. And she said, because her first question to me was, could you be pregnant because of my age? And even a medical professional didn't think to ask, or say, go to the ER, you have signs of a stroke, because I was so violently sick and my vision was off and my balance was off. And then the next day I had my stroke. And people don't think of younger people with strokes. So then when I
Yeah,
was in inpatient rehab, I was the youngest person there. And it felt very strange to be so young and having going through the stroke. And I also thought to myself, if I were 85, which there was a lady who was literally 60 years older than me across the hall, I don't know if I would want to even be here anymore. I think I would have been like, okay, I'm good. Like, just take me now and let me move on. Because
yeah,
it's so hard. I mean, how when half your body doesn't move and you're so acute. And I mean, I could barely lift my head off the pillow for so long. You feel like you've been hit by a train. I just remember feeling just really out of place there. But I did have incredible care and a really encouraging therapist. I was at Baylor Scott and White in Plano, Texas, and the people there were amazing, and they were all closer to my age, which in a way I felt like we had camaraderie because I was closer to their age, and I think they kind of felt more like, oh my gosh, this could be my sister, or you know what I mean, or my
yeah,
best friend that had a stroke. I
yeah,
felt that was comforting to me that my therapists were closer to my age for sure.
yeah. What you mentioned before, this is as good as it's going to get. What clicked for you that you realized that that was BS?
Uh, so I'm just my personality in general, and I would say my personal spiritual beliefs. I don't believe you're supposed to die young. And when I really love life and I was at the peak of my career, I owned my own business, was only 34 years old, totally healthy, no other problems. I said to myself, there's no way I'm gonna die. This is not the end of my story. I said that in the ICU. I remember there was a doctor that told me, like, you're never going to walk again. You're going to be in a wheelchair. And I literally said, F you, and said to my sister, I want another doctor. Like, that's just me. I just have that spirit in me. It was just never a question. I just have that. I was like, I don't believe you're supposed to die young. I don't believe that's the end of the story. And I believe that our bodies were designed to heal. I believe that I still have a lot more time on this earth. And like anything else in my life, I put everything into it and I was determined to come out of this. This this is the hardest thing I've ever gone through in life. But even being 37 years old, I have been to hell and back several times, and this isn't the first time I've almost died in my life, just not from a stroke.
Oh,
So I'm like a cat I'm on my like fourth life right now. Hopefully, I don't have to use any more of them. But that's just I would say comes to my spirituality and my personality. I was just like, no, I'm not accepting that. And I think that that's just how I had to be. Because if you do accept that in that moment, first of all, no doctor should say that to you when you're on, 2 days into literally almost having been killed by a stroke, because
yeah,
not everyone survives a stroke. Some
exactly.
people are found not alive anymore.
Yeah,
So he shouldn't have even said that anyways.
yeah,
I think doctors should lie to you and say, "Well, you can do this." They should be positive. Also, the human mind is amazing. If you can grab onto something positive and not negative, it's amazing how far that can take you and motivate you. Even if it's not physically true, you can make it true.
very, very true. I,
Hmm.
I'm gonna kind of, I don't, this is probably a bad way to say it, but I'm gonna add a label to that.
Sure.
What did you realize the mental health aspect of it early on, or was it later on?
Oh, very early on because my cognitive was never affected by my stroke. And I was also fortunate to have a neuropsychologist in inpatient rehab, which I think totally helped me because when you do, I mean, when you have a stroke, it really messes with you, even if you are a mentally strong person. And most people, when they have a stroke, it does totally blow up your life. And you also deal with tons of emotions. Sometimes you can't self regulate. Sometimes you go into deep, dark depression because it is a daily battle. And you just have to know that this isn't the end of your story. And I think it does depend on how mentally strong you were before your stroke
Hmm.
and if you have a faith or not, your support system, all that. But I also think for me, because I was all still there mentally, that I was very aware of what was happening to me, very aware of my emotions, very aware of not listening to any negativity that was coming from anyone. But I also had a ton of positivity around me.
Okay. Did you get into support groups at all, or?
So I did. So I'm on two support groups on Facebook for stroke survivors, which I got into later on because for several months I wasn't on social media or even able to use my phone because of my vision and being so weak. But I'm very blessed to have a amazing mom and sister and a very tight knit inner circle that supported me a lot and still do through life and through this. I mean, other things in my life, this is just another part of it. But I had a whole community of people and still do that support me all this time later.
Wonderful. Tell me, how's your recovery today?
So I would say my recovery today is still not where I would want it to be. But most people, I get this a lot, and I'm sure you've heard this and it's been said to you too. I hate it when people say, you don't look like you've had a stroke.
Yes.
I, it is so ignorant. So when I'm sitting down, I look like a normal person. I sound like one, especially because my cognitive and speech was never taken from me. When I walk, I still have drop foot. My right hand and arm still don't fully function properly. I still get fatigue. I still deal with chronic pain every day. I mean, there's still a lot of invisible things I deal with. I still can't drive, still can't
Right.
put my hair up in a ponytail by myself. There's a lot of things I can't do, but on the other hand, I'm walking unassisted. My this is my affected arm and hand move,
Okay.
which they were never supposed to move again. I can see again, so I always try to look at the best of in everything and realize, and I will say this to myself, like I am the 1%. My recovery is miraculous. I even have, and I say this because I have one thing that happened that has no explanation other than it's divine. I had my brain scanned twice. I have had an MRI done at my 1 year mark and then again during my stroke study. And there is no sign of a stroke on my brain. It looks like a perfectly healthy brain.
Wow.
And that's not normal. Once you have a
Yeah.
stroke, it is always there
There's
wherever
remnants,
you had your stroke.
remnants somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. There is no sign of a stroke on my brain.
Wow. But you still have the physical
I
signs.
still have the physical symptoms, but I used to have two big blobs, I call them blobs, gray blobs on my brain scan MRI from my initial stroke. One where, the stroke was initially my neck, and then where it moved that caused the damage to my left eye. It's not there anymore.
Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, right?
It's not there. So to fully answer your question, I'm very grateful that I'm still here and alive and my recovery, some days it feels like this happened yesterday. Other days it feels like it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. We're doing a new show next week, and I mentioned this because you are so darn positive. But we're starting a new show in the mornings next week called Catch the Wave. It's
Mhm.
warriors achieving victory every day.
Oh,
And
I
that,
love that.
yeah, it's talking about, hey, don't give up. I mean, it's amazing to me that you have, I mean, at such a young age to have a stroke and be able to have so much hope. How, where do you get that? How do you get that? How do you communicate that to other survivors? I know
Well,
that's a weird question. It's
no,
difficult.
it's not a weird question. I I've got that mainly just because I am who I am and I've always had a really strong faith in God. That's where it comes from. I just like I said earlier, I just know like I don't believe you're supposed to die young. I don't.
Yeah,
And I've experienced God so much in my life in so many other ways that don't make sense besides it was divine intervention. And I believe that. So that's where that comes from. And then I wasn't on social media for a long time, and my talk therapist challenged me to start sharing my story online. And I told her, I don't want to do that. When you've also at the time, I still had my eye turned in and I didn't feel as confident as I used to. And I just told her, no, I really don't want to do that. And she challenged me, and I never backed down on a challenge. And then I used to wear sunglasses, and the one side was taped so that I could somewhat function without being dizzy every day. It was taped on the one side, so
yeah.
it tricks your brain to think you can see single, even though you wouldn't
Wow.
if you had them off. It's like a little trick they do. So I was like, I'll do it. She's like, without your glasses. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So that's how I first started doing it. And so my online platform, I just share what I go through every day and what I do. And it's my online journal, so to speak, and also to show other people and stroke survivors of all ages, but younger stroke survivors predominantly because life isn't over and you can still have your life. Like I travel once or twice a month. I remember the first time I traveled, I had so many stroke survivors that private messaged me and they're like, "How are you traveling?" I said, "You just hire the wheelchair assistance, is it's complimentary, and tip them, and it's not that big of a deal. Like, wear your sunglasses. They'll think you're a celebrity, you know?" Like you just have to not care what people think.
Yeah, your positivity is amazing. Thank you for that. It's interesting. You've mentioned, let me see, the neuropsychologist, the neurooptometrist. Were you lucky enough to have a lot of referrals to those things, or did you have to
So
find them yourself?
no, I didn't find them myself. So I don't know how it works in every state, but it was my first time being in South Carolina, right? So from Texas to South Carolina, my social worker at inpatient in Texas referred me to my PCPs, the primary care physician in South Carolina, and he referred me to all the doctors I needed. So I told him I'm going to need a neurologist, a ophthalmologist. I had a dietitian, an OBGYN, and I need therapy. So how it works in South Carolina, you can't even get those doctors without a referral from a doctor. Like you just can't call an office and say, "Hi, I need an appointment with you." Like you need a referral anyways. So that's how it worked out here. I don't know if it's like that in all the other states, but that's how it works in South Carolina.
That's interesting you mentioned that because I think that's one of the things that I'm realizing is that for younger people, the insurance aspect of it is so much different than older. I mean, I was on Medicare and Medicaid when I first had mine. So, I mean, that was a huge difference in coverages. But now, even on Medicare, because I'm over 65, the the insurance is much easier to deal with than what the old insurance policies, what insurance policies are for younger people.
Well, so in my case, when I had my stroke, I actually did not have insurance because I was self-employed and I was a super healthy person. And I was like, anything I ever needed, I just paid cash, went through it. I don't have kids. I wasn't married. I never thought in a million years something like this would happen to me. I've had insurance before, but I literally never used it for anything. And then one time I actually needed and have it. But I actually just posted about this recently. So I have zero medical debt. And the reason why is because I ended up applying for three different charity applications in two different states. So all hospitals have these, but you have to ask for them. So I asked for it at the hospital that I had my stroke at in Texas. I applied for charity application for my hospital bill there. I applied for the charity hospital bed at the inpatient rehab. And then I applied for outpatient charity application here in South Carolina. I got all three. So I
Wow,
have zero medical debt at all. All my all my medical debt has been paid in full. And
I
that is
never
also
heard.
why I say that I have a very strong faith and know that's incredibly divine favor because that's not a normal story either.
Yeah, I've never heard of all of that.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
did you have to do the same thing for your meds?
No, so actually my meds for the first year, I just paid for them out of pocket, which my parents helped with. I had savings and I had a business that I sold, and that's what kept me afloat for a while. But I did apply for Social Security disability, and then I also applied for Medicaid because all my assets went to zero, but that took a whole year. And then finally, when it did come through, I was on Medicaid and I've been on Medicaid since, which, Medicaid does take care of a lot of your scripts. But
Yeah.
I have also gotten off a lot of my scripts because I am younger and I do say I had a freak stroke. So I'm kind of probably a pain in the butt for my doctor because I'm always the one every time we have a follow up, I go, okay, why do I need to still be on this? and etc. But I went from 13 scripts and I'm down to 6.
Wonderful,
Yeah. So
wonderful.
I have a very unique story, and it's definitely not the norm. And I know a lot of it has to do with God, and a lot of it has to do with me advocating for myself and also having an amazing support group around me. I couldn't have gotten through this without my mom as my
Yeah,
caregiver. My sister used to work for a law firm, and she doesn't even live in South Carolina. She did all my applications, kept records of everything. She helped me so much in that regard and with paperwork and all of that. And I don't know how people do this if they don't have that support. I mean, it's so
yeah,
hard with all that support. And if you don't have that support, I don't know how people do this.
yeah. You have to really seek it out because
You do?
it's not really out there obvious. It's not obvious at
No?
all. You really have to work at it. I'm going to put you on the spot a
Sure.
little bit. Um, you know, I said before we didn't know what we didn't know. Um, what would you, what would be the top 3 things you would tell a new stroke survivor that you learned over the years that you wish you would have known?
Top 3 things. I would have for the number one, for the financial side of things, I would have applied for Social Security disability even sooner than I did. We, when I say we, I mean my sister and I, she helped me with all that because I couldn't even do it with double vision. And I'm right-handed, by the way, so can't
Oh,
write.
yeah.
I'm ambidextrous, but that has happened. I wear my left hand now. But I would say Social Security, disability, and Medicaid. A lot of people don't understand how that works. And they wait too long for that, or they don't apply the right way, etc. I would get on that ASAP, regardless if you have insurance or not, because when you go through a stroke, it depends on, I guess, who you work for. Like I was self-employed, so I didn't have long-term disability or any of that, right? I would apply for Social Security disability, and if you qualify Medicaid, Medicare, get those applications in. The number 2, I would also think about all of the things and reach out to the people that are right there with you, your therapists, etc. All the things that are going to make your life easier for however long, like silly things, like, for example, an electric toothbrush. Why didn't I have one for the longest time? That made my life so much easier after I got one. Like
Wow.
electric toothbrush, the in a shower, the shower head that pulls down, um, a shower chair that swivels out, like simple things that make your life easier. Don't wait to get all those things as needed and be frustrated with it. Get them ahead of time and find out what you need. Like I can give you a list of them. I actually had a friend of mine whose mother just had a stroke a couple months ago, and I literally gave him the list of things that helped me that I found, have accumulated over time. But I wish I had known at the very beginning, it would have made my life easier. And then the third thing, let me think. The third thing I would say, oh, the third thing, and this is probably on a personal, emotional side, you're going to lose people in your life that you thought were going to be there forever. And it's okay. And it's not you. I lost some friendships of 10, 15 years that I had no idea couldn't handle me having a stroke or thought I would be a different person after this or whichever. And it's very painful, but it's okay. Focus on the good people are the people that stand by you, and you will end up having even deeper friendships or relationships with those people.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Tell us about your social media so that people can go on, because I love your posts. I mean, they're so positive and
So
information.
I try to post every day, and I just share what I do and what goes on in my life every day as a stroke survivor. And my social media handle is mainly Instagram. It's at Angie V like Victoria, blue like the color, BLUE. And feel free to DM or message me on there and follow my recovery journey. I always try to share my daily challenges, and I keep it fun and positive,
Yeah, you
because
do.
if you don't laugh about this, it will get you down.
Thank you so much for your willingness to share your story with us today. I hope we can talk more in the future too. Have a great
Yes,
day.
thanks for having me on, Ralph.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.